We're going to round out the first chapter of Gunther Anders' text, The World as Phantom and as Matrix. Normally, we've been going one section at a time. Today we're going to cover both Section 9 and Section 10, in part because Section 10 is of comparative brevity and Section 9 recapitulates many of the themes that we have already canvassed in the previous videos. Section 9 proceeds with what initially had been couched as the second of the three collateral causes of what Gunther Anders terms the banalization of the world. Before getting into that, it's probably incumbent upon me to talk a little bit. I should have done this earlier about the word being translated. It's the German word is Verbitterung. Verbitterung. That's Verbiederung. And banalization is a translation. Well, bad is, of course, imperfect. All translations are imperfect. Other words that are in the vicinity would be words like familiarization, or I actually like the word domestication. So, to again recapitulate the broad thesis, through the manner in which we receive the world vis-a-vis broadcast media, it becomes subjected to a process of banalization. What is extraordinary or distant or exotic or phenomenal or miraculous about the world becomes transposed into that which is merely ordinary, a kind of familiarization which has a sort of trivializing effect on our relationship with it. And this then is taken up in the 9th section and connected by Anders with the notion of alienation more generally. And he's already done this, at least in part, in Section 8, where he talks about the three collateral contributing vectors to the phenomenon being the commodity character of our relationship with images, and how it serves the interest of an image as a commodity to be familiar to the person who is receiving it. Alienation isn't exactly what you want to call a saleable quality, right? There's also the two other roots he mentions are the sort of neutralizing effect of science and the sort of hyper-objectification which arises and assumes an ideological character under the dispensation of the modern scientific project. And the other, the third collateral root, if I can sort of jog my memory a bit, is what was the third one? There is the commodity character of the event, there is the neutralizing effect of science, and shoot, it'll come to me in a second. It'll come to me in a second, and I'm kind of embarrassed that it's escaping me. But to drive into Section 9, right? He says that what's interesting is that this process of banalization, which goes not sufficiently acknowledged, not sufficiently acknowledged. I never know where to look holding this phone. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. If my eyes are at something of an odd angle, well, there you have it. Where was I? So, to recapture the thread, he wants to intimate that the banalization or the domestication of the world is intimately connected with our alienation from the world, and this in two senses. On the one hand, and this had been the sense which had already been adumbrated previously, the manner in which the world begins to seem ordinary and familiar to us, almost inexorably so. It serves to conceal the extent to which we are alienated from it by our contemporary mode of existence. And here, Anders is essentially referring to the fact that we are ensconced in a capitalist mode of production, under which mode of production our relationship with products of use value has been compromised in a very deep, radical way, so that we are no longer organically in touch with our own labor or with each other. But because of this spectacle, which word I use advisedly in homage to Guy Debord, whose own thought is sort of, if not an active conversation with the suggestions of Gunther Anders, certainly resonant with the suggestions of Gunther Anders. The spectacle which is proffered by the world being transformed into a mere matrix for the production of events that have a commodity character to them, discomfort acts as a kind of balm that suppresses the acute sense of alienation that we would otherwise derive from an undue consciousness of our situation. It, in other words, conceals the extent to which we are in a deeply problematic context, a deeply problematic situation. But this could be dismissed as a sort of an accident, a manipulation of advertisers and so on and so forth. But Anders wants to say there's something deeper going on here. This is not just some sort of broad plot to anesthetize the proletariat from the harsh realities of their existence. There's a deeper structural distortion which occurs with the banalization, the domestication of the world. Perhaps it would be salutary to provide a concrete example of what I mean by banalization in this connection. You could take the example of watching a documentary about climbing Mount Everest or some similar human feat. And in the process of taking in that documentary, what one might find is that a kind of ordinariness begins to affect your relationship with it. It's like, oh, well, that's something fine. Well, you go climb a mountain or, run a marathon and all that, right? You can even think of a fictional example of Rocky, and then the so-called the famed trope of or motif of the training montage, which is often associated with that film. It's all very comfortable and exciting in a superficial way, but what it does is it actually creates this dishonesty, because what's actually involved in climbing something like Mount Everest or running a marathon or training to be a serious contender is far more exigent, far more arduous than you would infer from simply the entertainment that proffers these images for us, right? And this actually intensifies our sense of alienation, because when we go out and about in our ordinary life, we actually encounter the friction that is concomitant to our finitude, and feel that there's something amiss about it. But rather than understanding that as being a character of the human situation in general, or a character of being in a problematic socio-political context, we have lost an effective vocabulary to capture that manner in which this challenge is in itself an expression of our alienation from the world. And then it ends up speaking to creating a sense of torsion in our consciousness, this tension between the idea that we should find life altogether convenient and comfortable and amenable to a project of mass entertainment, that impression is in stark odds with the reality of what it is to be thrown into the world and to live an actual life, right? And what Ganders offers is that this is a deep and almost inextricable connection, from which I think he then goes on to mount a critique, not just of broadcast media, but the manner in which contemporary science and the project of modernity has created a very problematic juncture for human civilization writ large. And this finds voice in section 10 of the first chapter, where he says, there is a potential problem with my thesis. The potential problem with my thesis is that it presumes that we can, in fact, be alienated from the world. But in fact, perhaps that ship has already sailed. Perhaps the project of the spectacle has become so overwhelming, so ubiquitous, so suffused into every nook and corner of our lives that we no longer are capable of standing at a distance from it and realizing a sense of alienation from it. Anders is concerned that we've become so inundated by a culture of image. And again, this is mid-20th century. This is before the internet. He's only dealing with television and radio and cinema, right? Even then, he's concerned that our very souls are being hollowed out and replaced by simply a cooperation with the programming of the programs. And here, of course, he's talking about television, but the resonance now sort of folds over into the digital atmosphere in which we find ourselves. Where is the independent human essence? Maybe essence is not the best word there, but the capacity for human agency, will, decision, intentionality. Where is that? And he's concerned that it is something that, if it has not been lost, is certainly in grave risk of being lost. And so then we're going to get into this, I believe, in chapter 2, where he takes up the notion of the phantom. And we've already seen the phantom-like character of the world has been defined as the manner in which the world presents itself to us as both present and half present, and as something which we then receive as ours. This is an apparent shift in our, again, the straight nature of the structure of our existence. We are no longer being in the world or amid the world. We are receiving the world. So there's a passivity, an almost inexorable character to this vector of reception that robs us potentially of actual freedom. And so that's where we're going with it, as we sort of round out now what has been section 1 of The World as Phantom and as Matrix. And I thank you guys for listening to me as I go through it. And that's about it for the moment. We're going to transition, but I think I'm going to do an interlude before I jump into chapter 2. I think I'm going to do a video or two on a fine essay by Ivan Illich. Well, the title of the essay is, I can't remember the exact title, but I remember the title of a subsection, which is sort of its denouement, and it's a hygienic manifesto, the right to live without a diagnosis, if I'm paraphrasing that correctly. And certainly still all too vital and concern at this point in time. But all right, so we'll wrap it up there. This has been Tom talking about Gunther Anders and his fantastic little essay. I think I linked to it in the description. The World as Phantom in his Matrix, and I'll catch you guys soon on the flip. Ciao for now. Bye.